they weren't, but people who are like-minded, focused on God, look and say, wow, how does he go in there and say, we can overtake the land because God said we could? Mm-hmm. Right? Powerful thing.
Yeah. That's a good thought about when you're around like-minded people. Then that's who you're gonna influence. Because at the end of the day, we're all individuals, and we make our own minds up about things. And leadership is not about forcibly taking people along, right? That's not what we're talking about here. Lee?
Hey, one thing I see with that list that you've got there is where these men came from. Those men, at least at one point in their life, probably never expected that they were going to be leaders. Moses, when he was raised in Pharaoh's house, he's about 40 years old. He thought he was going to be a leader. He even thought then maybe he was going to be the one that brings them out. Mm-hmm. Well, God sent him to lead sheep for 40 years. He gave up on that idea before he saw the burning bush. Joshua, the first part of his life, spent as a slave, no doubt, in Egypt. Who's he going to lead? I'm a slave. Peter, as a fisherman. These were lowly men. Mm-hmm. And then you think about Timothy. Timothy was half-breed. Okay? The Jews probably did not hold Timothy in very high esteem whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So these were men that come from very lowly backgrounds for the most part, with the exception of Moses, and God humbled him, for those 40 years. And just because they were not brought up in such a way or in circumstances where they thought they were going to be leaders, didn't mean that they couldn't be. Mm-hmm. And they flourished in those roles.
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, that's some of the reason we'll talk ourselves out of things, because we don't have the background that we think others do, or whoever you put on that list. You find people who were willing to work with God, and God works with them and through them. And if you ask any of them, what was the key? What was the key to your leadership? I think that's what they would tell you. So God, again, the gospel is about God making something incredible and unexpected out of a wreck, a mess, and he does that time and again. So certainly he can do that for us. He can do that for us. There are responsibilities that we have. If we work with him, he'll work through us, and we'll be able to meet them. Anything else about leaders being born or made? All right. Now tonight, the lesson 2 is show yourself a man. Show yourself a man. This comes out of 1 Kings chapter 2, and this is the scene is that David is dying, and he's talking to Solomon, his son, and giving him some final wisdom, some instructions, and this is how you'd expect, I suppose, a dying father to speak to his son. Although the rest of the chapter is about him telling him, "Hey, make sure you kill Joab after I'm gone." So, but anyhow, just the context here. It says, when David's time to die drew near, he commanded Solomon his son, saying, "I'm about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do, and wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons pay close attention to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness, and with all their heart and with all their soul, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel." So what's the point? What is David's concern?
That he'll fall away from following the Lord and doing his will.
Okay. He's concerned about his son falling away from the Lord, not doing his will. Okay. Anything else? I mean, absolutely. That's a concern. David knew something about that. Had experience with that in his own life and in the life of the first king.
I think he says, show yourself a man, and then he defines what that is.
Okay.
You know, it's keep the charge of the Lord, walking his ways, keeping his statutes. A lot of people don't see it that way, but that's the way it is. A true man will humble himself and know that there's something much greater than they.
Yeah.
And it's not just that he wants his son to do well. He keeps talking about the future succession beyond him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's concerned about his son, and then he's concerned about grandsons, the future. Now, David dies in hope, right? He doesn't know what that promise meant all those years earlier that God made with him, that his throne would, that a descendant would rule on his throne forever. He doesn't know what that means or how it has anything to do with the Messiah. But there's a future that God has promised. And Solomon's going to be part of that. And he wants him to do his part in seeing that comes about. Also, back to Brian's point, it isn't just be a man, it's qualified. It's qualified. And of course, this is not the first time David had a conversation like this with Solomon, I'm sure, right? Solomon knew what mattered the most to his father. With all of his flaws and sins and misjudgments and mistakes that he made, he knew what was most important to him. And so this is about, David's saying, this is about you, but this is the key to your success in your reign. And as we know, what happens after is that Israel really reaches the pinnacle during the reign of Solomon. And I think we often think about David, and David does some great things. David really lays a foundation that Solomon builds on. And there's a time where it's just things are as close to perfect as you could get as far as his kingdom is concerned. And then when does it all fall apart?
When he could show himself to be a man.
Well, there you go. When he doesn't do this is when it all falls apart. And it's never put back together. Never put back together like it was. So Solomon will tell us about that, right? And trying to pass on what he's learned about that. Lee?
I think the best qualifier he puts on that is right before he says, show yourself a man, he says, be strong.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be strong to be a man.
Yeah.
And he's not talking about running out hitting the gym every morning.
Right.
He's talking about a mental strength and a spiritual strength that he's going to need in order to show himself a man and to fulfill the rest of those commandments and things that he's laid out for him to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And is it good to be king? They say it's good to be king. I don't know. It's not good to be a dad all the time, let alone he needs to be strong because of the pressure the constant pressure that's there from a lot of different angles. And Paul uses this kind of language to the Corinthians. He basically says the same thing in 1 Corinthians 16. And it's this acknowledgement of the hardship of it, the burden of it. And but he's going to need more than just this strength of mind. He's going to need God's word to do that. Anything else about the show yourself to be a man? Well, the question is, what does it even mean to be a man? A lot of questions today about what's a woman. I guess that's next door. What's it mean to be a man? We don't need to go around the room. This is basically it's the same kind of question we began on Sunday. Well, what's a leader? What does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be a man? that's a simple question on one hand. It's a deep question. It's a philosophical question. Again, you can do plenty of reading where different people over time in different cultures have grappled with that, recognizing really the responsibility of manhood and what it means and what it's to look like. So what does it mean to be a man? As has already been brought up, there is an answer that our culture would give to this, right? And the answer that our culture gives, I'm old enough where it's changed. It's changed over time, but culture has always had an answer to this question, and I'll show you a passage where you get a sense of this. In 1 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 8, Paul says, "I desire that in every place the men should pray, lifting holy hands without anger or quarreling." In the next text, he addresses women. So what is Paul doing in this text? Well, I would suggest to you he's answering the question, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? He's getting at that. And well, if you want to be a man, well, what does it mean to be a man? Well, men are aggressive. Men take things by force. They're angry. They're given to anger and quarreling, and they can use those qualities to get what they want, when they want it, how they want it, however much of it they want. There's this perspective, and that's been fairly consistent over time. And Paul says, no, if you want to be a man, learn to pray. That's who prays. What kind of a man prays? A man who's humble, a man who knows he can't do it by brute force. He's not enough. Not a lot of men think like that. And I think Paul he's cutting against these cultural stereotypes. So we don't want to be the stereotype. We don't want to be the stereotype. We want to cultivate the kind of heart, really, that Paul is getting at here in the text. Any reaction to this passage? Again, you got to ask when you read Paul, what is he trying to tell us? Maybe you're tired of me asking that question. That's the question I'm always asking when I read the scriptures. What's this writer trying to say? But he uses that stereotype and says, no, that's not gonna work. So what is a man? If we went and we looked at Adam, and we'll probably do more of this, there's a couple of things that stand out in the opening chapters of Genesis about Adam, about this man. Number one, he was made in the image of God. And so what's significant about this, of course, is this is what makes him different from everything else that God ordered and created. Adam's not like an animal. Adam is not like a plant. He's different. And the image of God, what that is in a lot of ways, I think, is a mystery. It's something you either have or you don't. It's not something that's given in measure. It is what makes us. It's what makes us humans. This is our distinctive quality. Now, within that, and thinking about who we are and what makes us different, probably gets into more of what we're going to talk about tonight as it relates to self-control. But he's made in the image of God. He has a relationship with God. Is that important to being a man? Having a relationship with God. A lot of men are their own God, right? That's what pride and ego is all about. I'm the one in charge. I set the course, and I determine the outcome. But he's got a relationship with God, and there's a dynamic to that relationship, isn't there? Okay, and that's important. He's given dominion of the earth. It's just amazing, right? God says, here you go. Use it. Have dominion over it. You're in charge. You're in charge of this. And so that's what Adam starts doing. He starts learning about this gift that God gave him. And then he's given a helper. He's given a helper, Eve, right? And so together they're going to, they're going to radiate the glory of God through stewardship, wise stewardship of God's earth. So these four traits are significant especially as we move forward in thinking about our roles as men in the various ways where we exercise leadership. We're not going to be much of a leader if we don't have a relationship with God. That's not a nebulous, better felt than told kind of thing, right? We can define what that is to look like. Dominion of the earth. That really gets into the quality of leadership. Jesus, in his ministry, he redefines power, right? We use power to have dominion. He says, the Greeks, they use power to oppress. We are going to use power in my kingdom to serve. That's in Mark 10, to serve. Remember sharing in his shepherding work, the quality of the leadership. So there's a way, there is a right way to have dominion of the earth. And we're going to talk a lot, I'm sure, about the helper and how we exercise leadership in the relationship of marriage and in family. Any reaction to these traits in Adam?
I will mention they're having more fun next door.
Having more fun.
We're taking it more serious.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I think they're laughing at you.
Yeah, that's
For me,
right.
that was my wife laughing.
Do we have a choice as a man to be a leader or not?
No. We kind of talked about that Sunday. That
Okay.
The context varies, but I think Logan, you were the one that I'm a man, therefore I am a leader, and we start learning about that. So this lesson tries to highlight the key to manhood, which is self-discipline. Self-discipline. So much of our lives come down to self-discipline, and maybe that connection's not made as strongly as it could be made. But much of what we are trying to do as Christians generally is a matter of self-discipline in some form or fashion. So to begin with, we'll just notice a simple definition of the term. The ability to control impulses, emotions, and behaviors to achieve long-term goals, requiring consistent daily practice rather than innate talent. It involves managing your mindset, removing temptations, and prioritizing actions over feelings to build habits. So what makes humans different from all of the rest of creation? Well, a lot of it has to do with the beginning of this definition, the ability to control impulses and emotions and behaviors. If you start thinking in those terms, you start thinking about what this looks like in our culture. Our culture doesn't like this, right? Matter of fact, our culture encourages just the opposite of this. That what you need to do is you need to follow your impulses. You need to follow your emotions. And well, that that might work okay in a Disney movie, where a lot of those things are promoted with kids. But in reality,
It doesn't work.
it doesn't work. It does not work.
If I wasn't able in my past life as a labor relations manager, contract negotiator, if I wasn't able to do that, I would have had strikes, walkouts, EEO complaints, continually. It's essential for a person in management. It's essential for any leader in any capacity to have to do that. Otherwise, you will be a failure.
Yeah.
Essential for a Christian, or you're going to go to hell. If we just want to call it what it is, right? That self-discipline, the Bible calls it self-control, right? So if we don't have self-control, it's a fruit of the Spirit, right?
Yeah.
If we lack that's why at the heart of this is very like a punch in the gut, right? Yes, men should have self-discipline, and that's not just that's every Christian.
Right.
A Christian life is self-control, so that we lead a life that draws others to Christ and put Him first. And if we lack that, yes, it is a very important characteristic of a man, right, that we need to have. But this stems from the core of what God told us to be, right? Especially when He tells us to go do things, be obedient and everything else. So there's no running from self-control or self-discipline. That's what the whole point of Romans 1:2 is, right? Offer your body as a living sacrifice. What does that really mean?
Yeah, here it is. Yeah. The fruit of the Spirit, that's usually, we like to talk about that until we get to that point. We're okay with a lot of the rest, but this issue of self-control, there's the challenge. But the idea is to achieve long-term goals. That gets back to, where are you leading? Right? What are you, as a leader, what are you trying to achieve? All of this requires consistent daily practice rather than innate talent. It's not natural. Self-control is not your natural inclination. And the idea of daily practice, well, that's what the scriptures talk about. This transformation that happens, this renewal that happens day by day. It's not a weekend hobby, right? Being a Christian is not a weekend hobby. It is a lifestyle. It involves managing your mindset. I mean, think about everything that goes on in the course of the day. And how do you deal with that? How do you help others deal with the chaos? You read Genesis, it begins, there's chaos, and God is bringing order out of chaos. And now He wants man to help share in ordering his world out of chaos. And so, if we're going to practice self-discipline, that's key to dealing with the chaos, to eliminating it when it arises. Removing temptations, being able to recognize pitfalls, recognize danger, things that are going to get you off course, and prioritizing actions over feelings to build habits. Right? If we're going to be transformed, we're trying to become a new man. That's the way Paul writes about it, right? You're putting off the old man and you're putting on the new man. This is the key. This is the key. Again, it doesn't happen just all at once, but it has to have a starting point. And we're going to start making an effort toward all of this. So the lesson highlights 3 examples of self-disciplined men, and the first is Joseph. And there's a large backstory for each of these men who are identified. We don't have time to go into all of it, but Joseph at this point had been sold into slavery by his brothers. And, we can only begin to imagine his state of mind, what he had experienced, and the effect that experience would have had on him. But we find where he resists sexual temptation, which is a a major temptation for us, especially as men. I think we all would agree on that. And he's able to resist it with Potiphar's wife, who makes advances continually, putting this pressure on him. So I think there's probably a few things that are going on here with him. Just the sexual temptation alone would have been significant. Perhaps this could have been a way for him to take revenge on Potiphar. It seems to be he and Potiphar get along fine, but he's a slave, and just his life is not shaping up the way he had envisioned, and so maybe he could just lash out at that. But he doesn't do any of that. Instead, he resists it and pays a price for it. He pays a price for it. In resisting her, then she goes to Potiphar, you remember, and says, Joseph tried to rape me. And he's thrown into prison for it. But he doesn't. He has regard for Potiphar, and he has greater regard for God. This is what we said, how Adam has a relationship with God. Joseph has a relationship with God. And that is intact, even while he's been ripped from his home and placed in this unfamiliar experience. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? If we can begin to get that into our mind, and that becomes our basis for engaging in the world. We're recognizing what sin does, that it breaks that relationship that we have with God. And that's what's supposed to matter the most to us. So it's a significant acknowledgement that he makes. And even as a young man, I mean, he might have been 20 years old at this point. He may have been younger than that. Daniel, another one similar to Joseph, and he takes a stand that he's not going to defile himself with the king's food or with the wine that he drank. And so, in taking that stand, who knows what's going to happen to him, right? It could just as well kill him there on the spot. But he's going to take a stand, and God protects him in that. It's significant. And then, lastly, Moses here. We've already talked about him. Moses, who is a free man, chooses slavery. A good life to a very harsh life. And he's remembered in Hebrews 11, esteeming the reproaches of Christ greater wealth than the treasures of Egypt. And so it's his faith that enables him to make those choices. I know we're running out of time, but here's what I want you to take away from this. If you look at the book, you can get more information about those examples. Self-discipline comes from faith in God. Comes from faith in God. That's where it starts. If you believe in God, then you recognize there's an expectation He has for your life. So that's where it starts. It's going to demand sacrifice. See, I heard the bell tonight. It demands sacrifice, and then it's liberating. It's liberating. If you read about these three men, it would appear that even though they're captive, it sure seems like they're free. Our world tells us that if you want to be free, live without rules. Follow your heart. Whereas liberation, true liberation, comes through self-discipline, living in the right boundaries. And when you live in the right boundaries, you live as God intended you to live since the very beginning. So there you have it. See you Sunday. Brian's teaching Sunday. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what me and Coach. I turn the barrel. Yeah. Yeah.
One off to become, right?
Yeah.
I can definitely do it.
Thanks.
Luckily, the last 5 years. I understand.